Hi everyone, it's Diane again, and I'm here for the next stage in working on these glue books. What I wanted to say before the knock on the door interrupted me in the last video was when you have pulled the cover apart, sometimes your end paper comes loose like this, so just make sure that you glue it down. That's all. I mean, I'm sure that you would know to do that, but I just wanted to point that out, that you should check to make sure that it's all secure. This is the final cover. I'm not going to be putting that together on this video because you've seen enough of that. Let me show you the covers that I did off camera. I did this one. This was a plain cover like this, and I just collaged on the front with Mod Podge. And then I put this fabric on. It's the same fabric as this. Someone sent these to me. They were cut-offs about that wide, so I have long pieces of this fabric. And it's perfect for doing spines. So this covered up the end of the pocket, but you can still, it's a tight fit, but you can still put things in there if you want to. And then we did this one on camera, and we did this one on camera. So the next step is sewing the signatures, because in the first video I showed the gathering of the pages together. I showed what kind of pages I used. I had already cut them. And I talked about the fact that I like to have some pages smaller than others. Especially with a glue book, I usually use a larger book for a glue book, and so you're going to have pages that are small. But that's nice to do that. I really like having a variety of types of pages and sizes of pages. Some of the pages are thin like this, but when you glue magazine images onto that, it's going to strengthen that. And then you have wallpaper that is very sturdy, at least if it's not too vintage, it's sturdy, and this one is very sturdy. And you could put gesso on that and do some mixed media on it. I would put some wax paper or something underneath it to protect the pages down here, and then just have fun. This is another thinner paper, but when you glue stuff on it, it will strengthen it. So I have 11 pages in each signature, and I have 3 signatures. That's just how I make my books. A lot of people do 2 signatures with more pages in each, and some people do a lot of really small signatures and just have them very close together within the spine. But as of now, this is how I do mine. So I have them all cut and put together, and now it's time to start putting them in the book. So I just take a piece of plain paper. It's paper that was printed on one side, and I don't want it. And so I'm just going to use the white side. And I'm going to cut it to the same width of the spine. And these spines were made 2 1/4 inches. So I'm cutting this paper 2 1/4 inches. And then the other measurement that I used for the height is the height of the pages. Let me do it down here. So the pages are 9 1/2 inches in this book. Some are 9 1/2 and some are 9 3/4 in these books. They're very close to the same height. Am I getting my head in there? I cannot see the markings on this. It's just an embossed marking, so can't see it. Oh, I moved it to 9 1/2 or 9 3/4. There. There's 9 1/2. Then, since I am going to use 3 signatures, it's very easy for me to mark the center. I fold it in half. That's where the center signature will be. And then I fold one end to the center and that's where another signature will be, and then I fold the other end to the center. So this is where those 3 fold lines are where your signatures are going to lie. And then to find the markings for the stitching, I use a 5-hole pamphlet stitch. I find that makes it quite sturdy. And once again, it's a odd number. I think all of the pamphlet stitch styles are odd numbers. So I fold it in half this way. And now I have the center marking for all 3 signatures right there. And I usually do 1.5 inches and then 3 inches, but since this is a longer book, I'm going to make this one 2 inches and then 4 inches. This is an X-Acto ruler that has the 0 in the middle. So I can go 2 and 4 this way also. Then I just move it up to the next line and mark 2 and 4 and 2 and 4. And then again on the 3rd line. And then I'm going to mark top so that every signature and the cover of the book will be, this will be the top, and all the measurements will be the same, because if you're off just a little bit, it will change, even just a fraction, the setting of the signature, and it could make a difference. So just to be safe, we do that. So now what I do, I used to take this paper and hold it here and then punch it through, but I would find that the paper would slip. So now what I do is I punch the holes just right here on the paper. I punch the hole and then just wiggle a little bit to make the hole bigger so that I can put a pen tip through it and mark it right on my fabric. I don't know of anyone else who does it this way. This is just what I have found works for me. Oops. Made that hole a little too big. And I keep a fine tip Sharpie in my container of binding supplies, because that little fine tip will go through those holes, and then it's dark enough to show on most fabrics, and not all, but most. And it won't show once you have your signature sewn in. So I just poke the tip through those holes, and you can see faintly. I'll hold it up to the camera when I'm done here. Just make sure you're going through the hole onto the fabric. That one didn't go through. There are some dark lines on this fabric. So like right there, the marking was right on the dark line that I couldn't see. Okay, so now all the holes are marked. Sorry, can you see those little markings there? Then I take my Tim Holtz. This is a Tim Holtz Tonic Studios, I don't know what they call it, paper piercer, or I'm not sure what they call it. This is the one I've had, and then I got a new one on clearance, or I bought it somewhere. And this one I don't use because I'm saving it for when I don't want this one anymore, because this is going to just keep on shredding. I also have this one from Stampin' Up. I don't know if they still have them, but this has just a cap on it. This one goes in and out, so you can set it for different lengths. But this one has a little cap. So there's different things you can use for poking the holes. So that's what I'm going to do now, is just poke the holes. You can set this on some foam or an old block of book pages to poke this through, but I just poke it through. My fingers are out of the way. I'm holding it up from the mat. Okay, all the holes are poked in the spine now. You can feel them. You can feel where the chipboard is poked. So you can't actually see a hole there, but I can feel. So that helps in guiding your needle. Now I need to poke holes in my signature. So I have all the pages. I'm just going to make sure they're lined up the way I want them, and it's easier with this because I don't have pockets and envelopes and things stuck in the pockets. This is just pages. You can slide these up or down or leave them in the middle, however you want them. Okay, so once I have them just the way I want them, I make sure they're all nested together and they're not loose in there. And I take a binder clip. You can use a large paper clip if you want, but I use these. And I clip one here, and then one on the opposite, on the other side and on the opposite edge. You can put a clip on all four if you want. I find that this is sufficient. And then make sure you're holding it right side up, and then put the top here. It doesn't matter so much with a glue book, but other journals, you're going to want to make sure your pages are right side up. And I have it right down in there. I fold it so the center row is in the middle of the signature. And I put the point in the hole there, and then kind of close the signature, and that way you're going to come out at the end, at the edge there, at the fold. Again, you can do this on a stack of book pages, like a text block that you removed from a book, or a phone book, or a piece of really thick foam, styrofoam. So now the holes are poked in the paper. I make sure I always put that back in before I set it down. Now I have my needle. I already threaded it, and I will talk about these things. I have purchased yarn darners, and these are really big holes. These would make it, these are really fat ends of the needles. They would make it difficult to pull through. This is a doll needle. I think I had those back from when I made teddy bears. But these come with various sizes, so I took out the smaller sizes and used those. And I have more yarn darners, so I'll use probably the ones in the middle. And then the thread that I use is waxed linen from Bead Landing. This might be from one of the craft stores, and I think this is what I get at Walmart, and I really like this. This doesn't have as much wax on it as this, so I find it easier to pull through. But either one works, and lots of people use other things, but I do like the waxed cord. You can also get wax that you can just take regular cord or thread and run it through the wax to coat your thread with wax. But I buy this, it says waxed cord. You can't necessarily feel the wax on it like on this one. I could actually scrape wax off it, but you can tell that it's kind of waxed together, so it will go through easier. So I take my needle to do the 5 hole pamphlet stitch. I put the needle down into the center. This is if you're going to have the ends of the thread in here. If you wanted so the ends of your thread are going to be out here, you can do that for a decorative look. Then you would start out here. But I usually start on the inside. So I put my needle down in there. And then I go to my first row of stitching. And again, make sure the top side of the signature matches the top side of the book cover, because I have put them in upside down more than once. So then the needle goes into the middle hole and then out that side. And lately I have been having trouble pulling the needle. That one came through. But I'm going to show you on the next stitch whether I have trouble or not, what I do. I was really fighting with it with the cowboy journals, and I don't really know why I was having such trouble pulling the needle through. I can feel it's raised right there, so that's where the hole is. There, got through the hole. And I'll get it through that hole. Make sure you don't pull this out. I've done that before too. So then sometimes I get it right down there, so the needle, the eye of the needle is right there, and that's the bulkiest part, because you've got the eye of the needle and then the 2 widths of thread there, and sometimes it is really hard to get it through there. So I have my husband's old pliers, and I just grab it at the base of the needle and pull it through. So that really saves my fingers when I'm having trouble. So then, I went down through the center and up through the next hole. It doesn't matter which way you go. It could be down here or up there. It doesn't matter. But now you're going to continue in the same direction. So I started by coming into the downward hole. So now I'm going to go back in the next hole going the same direction. You know what I mean? You go down, up, and down. And into the book. So I'm not having so much trouble pulling the needle through this time. I do have more trouble when I use the waxier thread. It's thicker and the wax kind of piles up as you pull it through. So now I'm going back down. So I'm going back into the hole that I already used. So what you don't want to do is go through the thread. You want your needle to go through the book and the paper, but not split the thread, because that'll just make it really hard to pull it through and get it tight. Okay, so now, instead of going down, the next hole is the center hole again. I'm going to skip that and go down to the next empty hole. I'm having trouble getting that one through. Oh, that came through. Okay. And I keep pulling on this to make sure it's staying tight. And I keep watching all of my threads, all of these lengths, to make sure everything is tight, because if you get to the end and one of those pieces isn't tight, you might have a hard time figuring out what you have to pull to get it tight. And sometimes I struggle with that, so I make sure as I work that everything is staying tight. Okay, so I made it all the way to the end, and now I'm going to go back up. There's still one space here with no thread, and so I'm going to go back up there. Don't worry, I'll do the next signature too, so you can see it again. Come back up there, and now we're back at the center. And there's one space here with no thread. So I'm going to go back up through the center, and this loose thread is on this side of the tight thread. So I want to pull the needle up on this side so it straddles the thread. Okay, so I have this side, and this thread is in between them, and then I just tie it. And you can cut it very short if you'd like. You can leave it long. You can have your thread so long that it hangs out at the bottom of the book, and then have a button or bead or something hanging off it. You can cut it like that, and you could glue something to the ends, like paper hearts and things. We do that quite often, but I'm just going to leave those plain. And it's pretty tight. I see that this thread is a little loose, but the signature feels good and tight in there. If I think it's a problem, I can take that out and do it again. But I'm going to move on to the next signature just so you can watch me do another one. My battery light is flashing, so if it shuts off, I hope that you'll have seen enough to know what I'm doing. Oh, drop that one. Sometimes after you have them clipped, you can feel that they feel a little warped, like the pages aren't quite lying flat like they should. So just to release tension, I might have to go back to the first clip and release it and put it back on, and then it's usually fixed. So just make sure that everything feels together and kind of flat and not warped. I didn't tell you about the length of thread. I already had the thread in my needle, so I didn't tell you that. I measure my thread about 3 lengths of the book page and cut it a little bit longer, and you'll have plenty. I cut my threads rather long, and I still had a good sized piece left over. You don't want to cut yourself short. The thread's not that expensive. Okay, so I have my needle threaded. Now I have to poke holes again. Guess I'll use this one because this one's handy. That paper slipped a little bit when I switched it over, so I'm just going to make sure there's the center where I already poked, and now it's all lined up again. Okay, put this back on. I don't want to get poked accidentally. And I will start in the center. And I will go to the next row of holes, which is the center row, and put my needle down in there. Pull it up and leave a pretty good length of tail hanging there. You don't want to pull it out too short. That's why it's good to have extra thread. Because while you're trying to find holes for the next, I hope I'm not putting my head in there. I told you I have to get my eyes really close to the project sometimes. Sometimes while I'm trying to find the hole, the signature is coming away from the spine, and then that comes out. So if I have it good and long, I have less chance of that happening. Whoop. See, I pulled that really hard and almost pulled that right out. So I want to make sure I get that good and long again. So I'm going to pull it back this way, that way, and then that way. Now I have a good long tail again. If I hadn't had that long tail, I would have been starting over. And back down. I went all the way up to one end, and now I'm going back down. Oops. Okay. Now I'm going to skip the center again and go down to the next hole. Make that page shifted a little bit. I think with the 5-hole pamphlet stitch rather than a 3-hole, it'll be more secure because your stitches are shorter and you just have more of them making contact, another point of contact between the pages and the spine. And I think it just gives you a nice secure binding. That is my personal opinion. It would be quicker to just do 3 signatures, or I mean 3 holes, but I like doing it this way. Now I'm coming up on the other side of the thread again. Sometimes it's hard and my needle comes up on the same side, and that's not a problem. I just slide it under, pull it out, and then it's on the side I want it to be on. Everything looks, well, that top one looks loose again, so I'm pulling here, and then I have to pull here, whoops, here, and then here. Sometimes it's just you go back and forth and you can't figure out what you need to do to tighten that thread. So now I've got this really loose one. And how am I going to tighten it? Now I've got 2 loose ones. I might have to start all over. No, it's not that one. It's that one. There. They're all tight. And now both of the threads are on the same side. So I'm going to slide that needle under. And there we go. I'm glad I got to show that to you. There's 2 signatures in. So then I will do the 3rd one exactly the same, but in the last row of holes. So obviously it will go down here and then it will be done. I don't think that I will make an attached closure. I might have something wrapped around it and tied. but this is almost done. You can see the 2 rows of stitching there. Sometimes I take a piece of trim or lace and glue it over the stitching if I don't want the stitching to show for whatever reason, or I just want to decorate it with some lace just to make it look pretty. So I'm not going to, I don't think, but just say I wanted to put this on it. This is a good width. I like to use lace that has, well, let me show you something different. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I can find all the laces that show one example but not the other example. And usually it's the other way around. Okay, so this has 2 sides that are the same. Both edges are the same. The same with this. Both edges. No, this one is different. This one has a straight edge and a scalloped edge. And so that one I would rather put on the edge of something and have the scallops different, you know? So I would not use this on the spine. Oh, that's the same as that. This one is straight on both sides, so that one I would use on the spine. And this one. But of course, this one is very different. I wouldn't use that on a spine. So I think you get what I'm saying here. Here's a really pretty one with some, oh, this one is different. It's flat on the top and scalloped on the bottom, so I would not put that on the spine. Okay, so I hope that you understand what I'm talking about there. So that's going to be it for today's video, and I will work on getting the rest of these glue books finished and sewn together, and then they'll be in the shop before you know it. So I hope that this has been informative and inspiring. And if you have any questions, if I left something out or you didn't understand something that I talked about in this series, please let me know. Thanks for watching, and I will see you again real soon. Bye-bye.